This is our first look tonight at William Bonac. Before a little while from now, we get to the confirmation round.
I've never really been a fan of the guys that walk back and forth and kind of arm in the air, begging for applause. I know Dexter does that. Kevin Levrone used to do it, but I'd like to see a more choreographed routine for the fans.
I don't know if Phil Williams actually picked up an injury with his lower half, but his left quad looks to me like it's just a little bit atrophy.
Atrophy is the word. It was a little bit down. The trained eye can see that. I'm not sure that the audience at home even noticed, but you're absolutely right. The big Maxx Charles, again, I told you last night he qualified by way of winning the Romanian Championships at the end of the year in November. And again, you're at the front of his body. The first thing I'm seeing is the midsection is just kind of put together a little bit funky. We normally want to see a six-pack, and that's not there. If he stays there, we can see a little bit, but he loses it in the transitions.
Now at 5'11", we know he has to carry a lot of mass to keep up with a guy like William Bonac.
Yeah, this is where he's strong. He's usually got those solid arms up there. It's just that he's kind of got a longer torso, and it's just not really peeled and detailed. And the quads, you can see, could be a little bit harder. That's when we talk about a little water under the skin. You can see that in the quads. They just aren't separating the way they should be at this level of competition.
There's obviously the intricate detail as far as water methylation, sodium, essential minerals can make such a massive difference with these athletes' physiques within 24 hours, leading in or leading out. And Charles has definitely got a film going on there.
Yeah.
I feel he was probably a little bit tighter yesterday than what he is here today. Definitely got more of a film taking place today than yesterday.
Yeah, from the back, it's much more noticeable in the hamstrings and the lower back. It's just, again, for some guys, it's their time, and right now on this stage at the Olympia, the other guys are going to exploit the lack of conditioning that Maxx does not display here tonight.
Well, Neil, and that opens up the question, as a former bodybuilder and as one of the best trainers to the pros in the world, do you look at these guys? I know every body reacts different to different methods and different methodologies, but you look at them and think, oh, this is what I would have done yesterday or Thursday.
No, because without knowing the bodies, you can't possibly make that, decision. There are athletes that I've seen in the past where I thought I would love to have had the opportunity to work with somebody like this, because maybe they've just got such a great structure and they've never really nailed their condition, etc. But for me to be able to say what he should be doing or what he should do without knowing what he's doing or what he has done, it would be an impossible, conversation for me to have.
If I had some advice for Maxx Charles, I'd stay on my diet. I'd go back to Romania and try to defend that title and get another victory under my belt, because we're in the middle of September. I think another month and a half, he might be back where he was a year ago when he actually qualified for this event.
Yeah.
Making his long-awaited Olympia debut from Iran, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome
Well, guys, this is one of the big stories of the week, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he brought night over night.
And he's traveled the furthest of any athlete in this contest for his moment in the light that he's been chomping at the bit for quite some time, and the fans have been waiting to see the arrival of Hadi Choopan.
For me personally, I feel the introduction of this gentleman to have the opportunity and step on stage to represent himself, his home country, and all the different native bodybuilders around the world is absolutely fantastic. And for him to bring the package in his first Olympia, I thought he looked great yesterday. Have I seen him better? Yes, I have seen him better, not in the flesh, but within videos and pictures. But he certainly lived up to what I feel people's expectations, and I think he should be super proud of what he's done here, himself and his coach, Hadi Rambod.
I can tell you, I looked at William, which I use him as the benchmark, because William was top 3 in this show, and this guy's got a little bit more wow factor. They're very comparative in terms of their height and their structure. I think Hadi's a little wider across the back and the shoulders, which I think William's a little bit more narrow. I think Hadi's got his glutes and his hamstring.
Yeah.
I think William was a little bit behind in that department, and this guy is just stacked toe-to-toe with muscle, and he's got a great midsection when he hits that.
Well, he doesn't speak any English, but he definitely speaks applause, because as they cheer for him, he is getting tighter and hitting those poses a little bit harder.
Last night I said he's in the top 3. I think a lot of people agreed with me. I think Hadi Choopan could be fighting for the title.
I totally agree, Sean, 100%. There's no doubts about it, and I think he is the perfect comparison with William Bonac, because even though structurally they're different, it's like a Kai Green and a William Bonac.
Yes. Well, he didn't disappoint after taking that long trip from Iran. The Persian
Ladies
Wolf.
and gentlemen, please welcome from the Czech Republic, Lukas Osladil.
Lukas is a former Arnold Classic champion of Brazil. A couple guys have that title. I know Brandon Curry's got it, and Kai Green's one down there. He's got a very unique way of flexing his glutes. You can see him already starting to pop out. That's one of his signature poses that's going to come. A little slight in the muscularity department on the back in terms of the thickness, but he does some very unique poses, which I'm always attracted to, because he does perform, and that's a lost art in bodybuilding. There's the glute.
Well, he moved up from the 212s, so that may be part of the reason that he's a touch slight. But as much as you mentioned it last night, how he hits the natural movement of the muscle in his original posing, I've been looking forward to it since last night to see what he brings to his routine.
Well, he'll set himself apart from the other guys because he's a performer. I mean, at his size, he also does the full splits. You don't see that often on the stage. But again, I think his weakness is that he's just a little bit slight. At 215 pounds, you can see he needs to be a little bit fuller and bigger. But look at the flexibility here. Look at this. And the balance.
Lucas always tends to be in condition as well. I've seen him better, I've seen him sharper, but he always tends to bring a level of condition which at least represents, him as an athlete and separates himself in certain ways as well as his posing. I don't know if he was a past gymnast, but his mobility and his flexibility is something pretty spectacular.
Yeah, you see things happening on his body that you don't think are going to happen, because at first blush, he's kind of soft and smooth, but then he actually hits it and it pops, and that's what you're drawn to that as the muscles start to change shape.
Sean, how old is the gentleman, do you know?
I don't have the age on him, but I've been watching his ascent in this bodybuilding industry slowly creep up, and again, coming from a slighter body weight. He's lost several competitions, but he wins when it's time. You have to win to get to this Mr. Olympia, so there's only one way here, and that's by victory. He's beaten a lot of guys, and it looks like he's still got some gas in the tank. But again, Neil, I'm one of those guys, I'm constantly looking at the midsection, and he's got to stay in control throughout his routine.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the USA, Lockett.
I'm really happy to see Michael get into this top 10, because he's an athlete who I feel has brought a level of conditioning to shows consistency. I do feel that he's a little bit down on his legs in some areas, because he's obviously got atrophy on his right side, etc. But he brings an amazing display of hardness and refinement in certain muscle groups.
Yeah, he's put together kind of funky. Like, the arms are really big, and you can see the slightness in the quadriceps, and he's kind of have a long torso with really high lats. But yet when he actually poses, you see some things happening. Those traps, they start at the top of his ear and come all the way down. Very unique traps that he has. But you can see in this pose how high the lats are and how long the torso are.
Now, I have age for him, Neil. He's 35 and actually started out his exercise career, if you want to call it that, as a boxer.
Oh, wow.
Which alludes to some of the really well-worn, mature muscle that you see on his frame.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't start out as a bodybuilder. I started out as a bodybuilder and wound up, as a retired bodybuilder. Making that transition is sometimes hard, and it takes a little longer to develop everything. Where Michael is a little weak in is in the back department. You'll see this now, and we've always said most contests are won from the back. And even though his back doesn't have the separation and the detail that it should, he's still able to knock off people and get titles. He's won over in Chicago, he's won over in Vancouver, he's won to get to this competition. So there's some bodybuilders that are very complete that he's taken out on sheer grit.
He's had 11 top 10 finishes, including one here tonight. This is the top 10 you're looking at for the men's open division.
He's got a lot of density and thickness, obviously, in his shoulders and his running through his arms.
Yeah, you can see he's strong in the arms for sure. And the legs are something that may never catch up. But again, Not everybody can be Mr. Olympia, but heck, if he can go knock off some of these victories in the other shows, more power to him.
Egypt, Mohamed Shaaban.
We mentioned earlier that the last real well-known Egyptian was Mohamed Shaaban, who was barely 5'5", 160, 170 pounds, but he was a two-time Olympia runner-up and defeated the great Lee Haney in the 1983 Mr. Olympia.
And one of the best poses of all time.
Absolutely, the magical Egyptian. And now we've got Mohamed from Egypt, who's got some arms that are just ready to go. Great biceps.
This is the first time I've seen this gentleman on stage, and I think that, yesterday's performance, he obviously deserves being up here, being able to present himself with his free posing, guys.
Yeah, and again, he's still didn't dry out the way that he should have for tonight. Didn't make the gains that he should have gotten in the last 24 hours. Still got that film of water and all the way through. Hamstrings, back, front. And again, what's putting him in the distance, I would say he's a top 10 guy, but he's not going to crack into that top 5 just because he doesn't have that muscle maturity and the separation you need.
And everything about bodybuilding is about being complete. You're only as strong as your weakest muscle group. You're only as strong as your condition. And when you bring everything and all stars are aligned, then you can be a very dangerous individual. You don't have to be the biggest guy on stage to be the most complete, most competitive, and take all those titles.
Right, and I mean, how long has it been since you've had an Egyptian competing in the Open Olympia? So while he may not fare well here tonight, he's the best thing to come out of Egypt. That's huge.
We learned that with our Libyan competitor. Last night with Kamal El Garni, Hadi, and Mohamed. They are absolute heroes to their people and just icons in the sport, which is growing in each of their countries.
Shin Kang in the classic physique in China.
Hide, Yamagishi.
These guys are rock stars in their country, and to be here on this international stage, competing against the world's best is a huge accomplishment.
We tend to find that the governments in a lot of these countries support their athletes, especially as amateurs. They really, really get behind them with supporting them and treating them as athletes as well as them obviously progressing into being a professional athlete as well.
They're literally ambassadors, whereas in the United States, you're so independent. You've got to get your sponsors, you've got to promote yourself, you've got to market yourself. You don't have the support of the government. But yeah, that helps these guys with their brand awareness. And again, I mentioned earlier, Neil, I'm a proponent of choreographed routine. I'm not real big on trying to ask for applause and the rah-rah type stuff. It's like spend the time choreographing something. We pay big money to come watch you perform. Entertain us, right?
Yeah. And ultimately, when you're on the stage and you're in condition, the crowd is going to get behind you anyway, whether they're a fan of your physique or not. When you bring a level of condition and structure and performance to the stage, the audience are always going to get behind you. They're going to give you applause.
Right. Well, and it alludes to the fact that we basically have 10 guest posers on stage tonight, the best of the best. Don't guess.
That's it. And you know what? There's a large percentage of income and revenue you can generate if you perform it properly to be in demand in other places around the world.
Our next competitor is competing in his 20th Olympia. 29 pro victories to his name, and your 2008 Mr. Olympia. Ladies and gentlemen, from the USA, Dexter the Blade Jackson.
Dexter made his Olympia debut in 1999. You know how much stuff has happened since 1999? And this guy's only missed one Olympia. This would be his 21st if he didn't sit out one year. Some kind of record. I don't think it will ever be broken.
For me, I feel that Dexter is one of the greatest all-time bodybuilders. And the reason why I say that is just name me an athlete which has been consistently at the top, won all the major titles you can possibly can for such a long time. I don't know anybody.
You're absolutely right. But again, Neil, when you do something long enough, eventually Father Time wins. And tonight, I think Father Time is catching Dexter simply from the fact that we've seen Dexter so much more superior than what we've seen right now. While he's 49 years old, he'll be 50 in only a month. We've seen Dexter with that 8-pack abdominal wall that's not there tonight. We've seen the glutes shredded, which were not there tonight. We've seen the hamstrings in a little bit more. So that little film of water is holding him back from his dream of a repeat. I don't think that's going to happen here tonight. but how do you knock somebody as consistent and as great as Dexter? I find it hard to criticize him because I'm older than he is, and at 49 years old, I was sitting on the beach drinking beers.
Such a huge respect at almost 50 to put your body through this, and as much as he does every year to get that many wins under his belt, to stay in prep, to stay that condition, and just pound away on that near 50-year-old body.
Well, this is where genetics come in too. You see the traps. When he's done bodybuilding, those traps are still going to be there. Those shoulders are going to he's not going to shrink down to nothing. But being the veteran, Dexter knows in the history of this game, the midsection is where everything starts. And when you relax it, that's the first thing we start to criticize. I think a year ago, Phil Heath lost to Mr. Olympia because of his lack of control of his midsection.
Now, he is beloved in the sport, especially having been a fixture for so long.
I can tell you one thing. I don't think Dexter's done because he was 7th a year ago. I believe he's going to be in the top 5 or top 6 here tonight. And if that's the case, that's more gas in the tank to fuel another year. And we could be sitting here looking at a 50-year-old Dexter Jackson 1 year from now, because there's definitely shows out there that he won last month.
He won at Tim Gardner's Tampa Pro, and he went up against Luke Sandoe, who we'll be seeing shortly.
I was there at the show, and I was super impressed with what Dexter brought, because I feel that Dexter was better this year in Tampa than he was last year on stage in Olympia.
Absolutely.
And we sit here and we've got to critique and we got to give our opinions and views and be very constructive. But Sean, for his age, his condition is still absolutely exceptional. Have we seen, is this the best of him? No, it isn't. But what he's presenting himself on stage is unbelievable for the industry in this.
And to give it perspective, there's going to be a lot of guys going home that just got their butts kicked by a 49-year-old bodybuilder.
So like how Dexter takes 10 minutes to get out there, then he runs off the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the USA, the King Snake Steve Kuclo.
He's got to be one of the happier bodybuilders coming into tonight, because his dream at the press conference was a first call out, Tim, and he got that yesterday. He is the Brandon Curry of last year, getting that first Olympia call out. Very nice skin tone and color on his posing trunks. Good selection.
Now, night over night, guys, we see that first flex of the chest. Did we pull some of that water out?
I don't think he dried up to my expectation. I thought there'd be a little bit more hardness here. The color is helping him.
Yeah.
He looks like another shade darker than he was last night, and that helps. But it also looks like it's flattening him out a little bit too.
Yeah, I think across his chest he looks a little flatter, to be honest with you.
And in the back, you can see as he turned to the rear to hit this side shot. He's got some poses that are signature to Steve. But again, this is still a deep field of veterans, and the criticism on Dexter, which was the midsection wasn't very peeled. Steve's never had that washboard six-pack ab, but he's got that body, that X-frame, those billowing quadriceps and those calves that set everything off with those nice deltoids.
Now, there's one of the signature poses right there, his most muscular.
Yeah, that's one of his favorites. And this is where he's still trying to play catch-up in the back double by, where contests are won and lost. He's got the calves. He's a little bit more detailed in the hamstrings, but he's got to get that muscle maturity of going across that back. And, of course, I've seen some of the best in terms of Ronnie Coleman, Lee Haney, Dorian Yates, Flex Wheeler. I mean, we've seen some very good backs, and he's a couple of notches behind that.
Which is some big company. Now, Neil, you follow all these guys very closely. Year over year, how's he looking?
He's made some big improvements. This is by far his best performance. I'm not saying that I haven't seen him better, but he's looking like he's going to be close to that top 6. You know, from 6th to 7th, I feel like possibly he was battling 6th, 7th, 8th maybe, but he's getting towards where he's want to. I think he was a little bit better yesterday. He had a reasonable showing at this year's Arnold. If I remember rightly, I think he came 4th or 5th. Obviously took a win then to qualify for here. I thought he represented a good package yesterday, but I feel that he's smoothed out a little bit since in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, and he's one of the more likable bodybuilders. Got a background in firefighting and EMT. I was actually on the flight with him when he won in Brazil. He won the South American Arnold Classic, and a passenger was in distress, and Steve Kuclo, with his victory trophy, came to the rescue.
That is too cool.
And he did what he was trained to do and put the life of another person before his victory. He could have been sleeping in the back of the plane.
I was actually at that show and I saw him take away that title in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah, and I think that's what gave him the confidence to know that he could actually survive in this as a professional. And now he's vying for a top 6 spot for the first time in his career.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the United Kingdom, Sandoe.
Guys are warming up backstage, just getting the last bit of nerves out. And this guy right here is a breath of fresh air. The last guy coming out of England was the Shadow, Dorian Yates, and of course Flex Lewis was living out there in Wales and doing his thing. This is the next thing coming out of England. I first got my preview of him at the Arnold Classic this year when he got 3rd place, which was a huge accomplishment because he took a lot of guys out in that contest.
I feel that Luke is doing a great job representing himself in the UK. I feel that what he puts out there as far as content, one of the strongest bodybuilders in the world. Whether you're into strength or power, you can't help but be motivated or be inspired by people's personal ambitions in the gym, with obviously lifting and performing and creating art on stage.
Jim, the guys over in the UK, they actually wake up to this music he's posing to. He's got a very unique look. He's got a beard. Very few bodybuilders actually have facial hair. He's got some really cool, funky earrings in there. He's got a nose ring, but you can't help miss the quality of those quadriceps. You don't get that big without throwing around some heavy weights.
Well, and to Neil's point about the work ethic, that's just he's got the warrior look.
Yeah.
And you know he's lifting like a warrior on a daily basis.
Look at those, the arms are solid, so I know he's a strong bodybuilder. His condition could be a little bit better, especially from the rear. He looks solid from the front. Big pecs. He's got everything there. He's just got to find in time drying out when it counts the most on the big stage.
I do feel he's made some improvements since yesterday, though. I feel that he's a bit tight tilted tonight than he was yesterday.
I agree. He is. And again, I'm a stickler. You've got to hang on to that midsection. Breathe through your chest, not your abdominals. Big, wide back. I'm not sure how tall he is, but he's a taller bodybuilder.
He's probably about 5'10", I would say.
That's tall compared to me. 5'6", 5'7".
You only got 2 taller in here, I believe. That's Steve Kuclo and Cedric McMillan at 6 foot and 6'1", respectively. But he is carrying a lot of muscle.
Yeah, and it's a little bit harder for these guys because you got to eat all that food, and then you've got to try to control that weight. It's nerve-wracking. The fans don't see this, but when you're posing and squeezing like that, it's hard to get enough air in your lungs when you're breathing through your chest. For me, it's easy for me to say because I'm smaller. But when you're that big, everything is a little bit more laborious to get to, and that's where the stomach comes in. Good showing, though. First Olympia.
First Olympia. That's very exciting.
Nothing to be ashamed of here.
If I had an award for best inspiring newcomer, I would give it to this next competitor. Making his Olympia debut from the USA, Patrick Moore.
This was the guy, Tim, last night we were talking about it. He was overlooked.
Yeah.
They did some crazy call-outs, and I'm like, they are leaving this crown jewel out. He is a little gem. Look at how he walks, and you see the feathers in the quadriceps.
Beautiful feathers.
He's Ronnie Coleman-like back when Ronnie Coleman was coming up as an amateur. Tiny. He's going to have to pull that Ronnie Coleman thing and just blow up one year and surprise it. He would be that dark horse in the future.
Yeah, he's pretty light as far as his frame, so he doesn't carry a huge amount of muscle. But that frame has the ability to carry a lot of muscle. And you know that when he puts that muscle on, and that density, that's going to be a very competitive physique. He's going to be one of the new breeds of athletes coming into the IFBB Pro League division. I feel that 1 or 2 years as he starts to mature, fill out, he's obviously brought a great level of condition here, crazy feathers in his quads. He's going to be a dangerous athlete in the future.
Yeah, we are actually looking at the future as we we're witnessing what Dexter brought to the stage. This guy at 6 feet, he's the next coming of Ronnie Coleman, in my opinion. This is Ronnie Coleman in 1992 in Helsinki, Finland, Neil, when he showed up and got dead last, right?
Yep.
And then he slowly crept up and beat everybody in the industry and became Mr. Olympia 8 times. This kid right here has that potential.
You talked a lot yesterday, Sean, about low back development, and you see how that just goes right down to a point at those hips.
Well, let me tell you, I like the posing, inspired by Lee Labrada. Are you guys familiar with that name? Labrada is a posing artist expert, and this is a kid that's definitely taking a page out of what Lee Labrada brings to the stage.
Lee Labrada was one of my favorite all-time bodybuilders.
Yeah, there's nothing to not like about Lee Labrada. And he was a very slight bodybuilder, a la Frank Zane. But this is a performance right here that I would like to see out of all of our athletes. This guy's actually doing a routine.
I think if this is what we're looking for, or this is what we're looking at as far as the future of bodybuilding, I think this is going in the right direction.
Yeah, he is exactly what I would want to be marketing if I was running the bodybuilding publicity machine.
And that would make a great trophy right there. Nice job, Michael Lockett.
Nope.
Patrick Moore. Patrick Moore.
We don't all look alike.
Nope.
I can say that.
Patrick Moore from
You're
Texas.
a comedian. You got jokes. Yeah. No, I think Michael Lockett would like to live like this. This guy's got genetics, man. He's got it all going on.
My notes are alphabetized. They're right next to each other.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the USA, Cedric McMillan.
All right, I said at the press conference, I said, why do they call you the one? And he said that one of the guys in the gym said, he's got a bright future in this sport. You're the one. Like Neo from
The Matrix. That was a great story.
Yeah, and he bought into that and believed it wholeheartedly. And look, he's here again. Cedric McMillan won his pro card by winning the national championship some 11 years ago.
You know, the frustration thing about bodybuilding is that people have weaknesses with genetics, shape, structure. But this is a guy who could have won the Olympia so many times, or certainly been a main contender if he just was able to nail and find out what worked for him as far as his condition concerned, because he carries that mass. I've seen him bigger.
Yeah.
I've seen him fuller. I've seen him more conditioned.
Sure.
But he's got dramatic posing. You know, he knows how to perform. This is art on stage, yes?
Yeah, and at the same time, Neil, we cannot leave out the fact that he is a lifer in the United States military, and he does a great service to the country, has a full-time job serving his country while moonlighting as one of the world's best bodybuilders. That's a tough juggle. He's got his obligations to the country, and then he goes to the gym and puts in the work, and we're getting the best that he can actually give us. Anything short of him cutting off his obligations to working for the military.
And that's really saying something, to think that his prep may have been interrupted, his timing, it may have been cut short, and he may not have had access to the ideal foods at the time, which is how he reached out to the IFL for those qualifying points, and they said, don't worry, what you do for our country is more than worthy. You put in 2 decades in the sport, we'll see you at the Olympia, and here he is.
Yeah, Arnold Classic champion over in Ohio. The guy's won competitions over in Italy, over in Germany. He is world renowned as one of the world's best bodybuilders. And yeah, the purists, Neil, are going to say if only, and if he should have, if he got a little bit this and that. We can criticize that all day long, but if we walk a day in his shoes, we're not going to make it to the gym at the end of the day. He's putting in too many hours serving his country.
I was in Australia earlier on in the year when he came second, and he brought a phenomenal package in Australia. I was very, very impressed. He made some dramatic improvements from 2 weeks before in Columbus, Ohio, to what he brought in Australia.
Well, he represents well with his posing artistic style for a guy that's 6 feet tall. And he's one of Arnold's favorites. Arnold actually really loves him some Cedric McMillan. And we bought into the idea that if this guy dried out one time and won the Olympia, it would be a game changer. I think he doesn't necessarily have to be Mr. Olympia. He's changing the game right now.
Alone from the U.S. Army, Cedric McMillan. Ladies and gentlemen, Please welcome from the USA, John DeLaRosa.
John's actually one of my athletes. We started working together earlier on this year, probably January this time. Kind of just missed our peak a little bit yesterday. We didn't bring our best. I feel that we made some great improvements from John's past couple of years when he stepped into Toronto and also the Puerto Rico Pro. But I feel that we brought probably about an 85-90% of our best yesterday. So obviously it's disappointing as an athlete and a coach, but at the same time it's about learning and it's about progressing. It's about taking information and looking to critique and make those changes necessary when obviously John competes and steps on stage next time.
Yeah, he's a little watery. Like, you cannot pull all the water out, especially if you're not hitting your peak. He peaked when he was in Toronto by way of winning the Canadian Championships to get here. But definitely when you're off and you can't drop the water, then everything else is left to be desired. The recommendation for John is either take a break, because this is 2 shows from June to September, or stay on it and go into November's Romania Championships. What do you think about that, Neil?
Personally, we're going to take an off season because he started off on a really bad place this year as far as when we started working together. You know, we had to try and grow, had to, you know, fix some issues, and I feel that, you know, he's been dieting the New York Pro, Puerto Rico Pro, long to Toronto, so he's been dieting for over 6 months.
Yeah, you just get more flat as the time goes on.
How many Olympias has he done?
I'm not too sure. I think John's probably done maybe 4 Olympias.
He actually turned pro right here in Las Vegas by winning the USA Championships overall. And he's not a big guy. He's about 5'6", packing on probably 230 pounds of muscle at least.
Yeah, that's exactly what they put him at.
Yeah, he's 230 exactly, guys.
Yeah, I think he's just going to have to take a break, like you said, and come back.
From the USA, Juan Morel.
Your 2-time New York Pro champion, Juan Morel. He's also won the Arnold Classic in South America in Brazil.
Obviously, Juan was coming into this show after a couple of wins, I believe. Obviously, won the New York Pro.
Yeah,
and I know obviously seen a number of pictures that he was posting coming into the show. But I think Juan's another athlete who's probably disappointed with what he's brought today, not from the lack of effort by any means, because he was really making some good progress.
Yeah. We saw on Instagram he made a post. He had some family issues looking for his daughter. Got reunited with her, but that had to be a stressful time while you're trying to diet, count calories, and train twice a day. He looks a lot leaner than he was in New York. I should say more downsized, not as full, but it's more noticeable in the midsection because it got a little bit more flat, less separation. Could be a little bit rounder, more fuller. I think this is probably the lightest I've seen him.
You guys talk to the people, the fans, the bodybuilders that want to compete. You know, we worry about our diets and our training programs, but how important you have those family stress, your job stress, the cortisol release, and what that does to your look on stage especially.
I think a lot of bodybuilders become selfish because they get self-consumed with only what they feel that they have to do. And I feel that if you're in a relationship and you work together as a team and you find balance in your life, that will make such a big difference as far as contest prep, mentally and physically. And obviously we all encounter challenges which come from circumstances. Yes, they do. But yes, of course, outside internal issues which potentially can hinder our mindset can be massively impacted negatively.
Yeah, well, again, I said that Juan is a little slight. He's been remained on his diet since May. And being a guy that's nearly 6 feet tall, from May till September is a lifetime. The legs are slightly down, the quads have lost their flare, the back is kind of flattened out. So I think sometimes the stress of rising to the occasion, the big Mr. Olympia, you can over-diet, you can over-cardio, you can under-eat. And Juan looks like a few things have gone wrong for him because he didn't come into this contest prep without any concerns that Neil just was talking about. Those concerns can kind of throw you off your game.
Yeah, you can see that Juan is struggling with that fullness. He's definitely, lost some muscle coming into the show.
Yeah, the arms haven't diminished at all. Those have always carried him through, but the legs, the fullness, kind of flattened out. But he's here, nonetheless.
On the Olympia stage.
Yeah, top 10.
I know Juan on a personal level. He's a really, really great ambassador for the industry.
Yes, he
gets
is.
on with everybody.
Yeah, he's not only a fan favorite, but he's a favorite to the athletes he competes against. There's that vascularity trying to come out, but it's a little too late.
Juan Morel. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the USA, Brandon Curry.
So here's the question. What has Blandon done in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, because he had to know he's up against, some stiff competition. Top heavy, right? I mean, those shoulders and arms and lats, just some serious muscle. I imagine he believes that he can win this contest, Neil.
Blandon, William, Roelly, those were what I would have said the main competitors coming into this show with equal ability to win the show. I feel that yesterday, structurally, just an absolute beautiful art, especially his upper body.
Look at those biceps and lats. He's playing to his strength. You see how he's doing the lunging poses? We were talking about his hamstrings being slight. He's choosing poses to accentuate his strengths, and they're working right now.
You see some feathers starting to develop in the tries as they bow down, but they are just really sweeping like they're almost hamstrings. Those triceps are huge.
Yeah, Blandon is a former Arnold Classic champion. He also won over in New Zealand and in Australia. The Arnold Classic there as well. Was the very first Arnold Classic champion in Brazil. So he's got 3 of those titles on 3 different continents, but the one that he's here to get remains to be seen. I'm going to find that out. He's on the way.
I don't think that Blandon could be any fuller. I think he's got incredible thickness and fullness taking place upstairs, and he's also a great poser as well. He's a great performer. I feel that he presents himself what bodybuilding is on stage.
Absolutely. I got to tell you that to a man, Brandon Curry does everything right. I mean, he's got 4 kids that he's juggling. He spends half the year over in Kuwait sending his checks back home to the family out in Tennessee, and he married a bikini competitor, Brandy Lever, a Hawaiian, with the Sean Ray Classic in there. But he is very concentrated on one thing: winning the Olympia, taking care of my family. That's a huge thing for him to want to desire to get, and it's right in front of him here tonight.
We are not far off from finding out if he's accomplished that this year with that open seat.
Big delta.
Big.
I feel Blandon's a little bit crisper today. Maybe a little bit crisper, or certainly maybe a little bit fuller.
Well, you weren't with us last night, Neil, but when we walked off, it was hard to see who was going to be separating themselves from the pack. I think Brandon is a better version of what he was last night, and by himself, I crown him Mr. Olympia.
He'd be a great Mr. Olympia as well. He carries himself in a very positive way.
Yeah, and the thing about it is he's still got to get compared with these guys. But standing alone, I'm much more impressed with him right now than what I've seen
Give it up for Brandon.
This is where the rubber hits the road in the comparisons.
Gentlemen, I think we're down to Roelly Winklaar.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the USA, Akim Williams.
You can't miss this guy. He's probably the biggest bodybuilder, pound for pound, on stage. I always refer to Akim. He's just like a silverback gorilla, just muscles on top of muscles. We mentioned who was Victor Richards, the Nigerian nightmare, who never was a pro bodybuilder, had all the potential, but this guy actually delivered.
And when he does a front double bicep or he does a front lat spread, just phenomenal taper.
He's got those wide, high lats. Very funky kind of a look, very unique. I can't really... Victor Richards is the only person we can compare him to, but Victor Richards could only dream about making it to the Mr. Olympia. Huge, huge arms. If you've seen this guy in the gym, you know he is strong. He is a beast.
New York, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
He's up there in New Jersey. This is his second Olympia. He's had four top 5s this year. 3 of those were second place.
And he was chomping at the bit. But again, when you get to this degree and this level of competition, you start to get picked apart, and you can find out why he's not a front runner for the title. He's one of the best in the world, but he's not in the conversation. The feathers are coming out on the quads. You can see the long torso, lacking a lot of detail throughout the midsection. The skin is very, very thick, and it needs a little bit more separation, especially when you get to the triceps and the back. When he turns around to the rear, you'll see that the detail is not going to be there. He's aware of all these criticisms. It's just the structure and the genetics, right? There's only so much you can do. He can get on the treadmill and he can go on a keto diet and drop all of his carbohydrates, and he still won't have the graininess of a Dorian Yates or a James Flex Lewis.
Yeah, and unfortunately, your genetics do play a big role. But obviously, living that lifestyle. I mean, Sean, your physique, when you were an athlete, you were a consistent athlete. I remember you had one bad Olympian showing, and you took that experience, and you came back, and you were consistent because you were living the lifestyle, you were making the choices, you were making the changes, you were disciplined, and that it makes a massive, but that can make a big change as far as genetics is concerned. Dorian Yates did not have the best genetics in the world, but that guy was a machine.
Yeah, he made the best out of what he had, and he took it to a whole other level. But again, there's not a lot of guys out there willing to do what Dorian Yates did, or even sacrifice what he sacrificed. Ronnie Coleman was the only other guy that would go down there to the deep end of the pool and swim with the sharks. Nobody wanted anything to do with Dorian Yates' style of training. Akeem could throw around some weights, but I don't think he wants to do what Dorian did.
Well, he looks happy to be here in the top 10. Good on him, and congratulations for all your hard work.
And your final competitor. The People's Champ right here on the stage last year from Curacao, Roelly Winklaar.
It's easy to see why he won the People's Champion from a year ago. Roelly travels the world and does everything. He sells out on the stage, going out into the audience to please the fans. Third place was his best finish last year here at the Mr. Olympia. Tumbled a couple of spots in March at the Arnold Classic, had a knee injury. Then he went on the guest posing circuit, and we saw glimpses of the future that Roelly was going to bring us. But last night, Tim, we noticed that he was a little bit watery. Neil, did you see the same?
Yeah, there wasn't the best of what we've seen of Roelly Winklaar. I think the best I've seen of Roelly was last year.
Properly, 5'6", 297. He's actually about 5'6" and a half at 297 pounds. I mean, he is a beast. They call him the beast because he carries so much muscle. But yeah, you're right, Neil. He's a little bit
297. We talked about it in the opening, how some guys at that height and weight are just blocks of cartoon muscle.
Right.
And he maintains some beautiful lines and some different, that waist is a little smaller, that shoulder back ratio is a little better. He just puts together a really nice package considering it's that darn big.
Yeah, well, he's leaps and bounds from when he actually earned his pro card. He won the Arnold Classic Amateur, and then he went on to win over at Kuwait. He's won over in Finland. Arnold Classic out in Australia. He knows how to win, and I believe he also knew that he was not 100% coming into this show. It looked like from yesterday, Neil, he's going to be in that top 4. He's fighting for that top 4 spot.
Definitely in the top 4, obviously, between William, Roelly, Hadi, and Blandon. That is where they are going to be battling out.
Can you imagine, Tim, competing, knowing you're off, and you still have a chance to be the top 4 in the world?
Give it up for the beast, Roelly Winklaar.
We're going to see just a little bit where he places in the world, and we're going to see...
This competition can get, and that's going to be this shot right here of our sold-out crowd. All right, everybody move back.
All right, this is being brought to you by Digital Muscle.
There's a lot of people here. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
We are living in the digital age, Tim.
Bob Ciccarello taking a big
Yeah,
picture for
see that on
posterity
your
of that
social
massive
medias.
crowd.
But it looked like he took a picture of himself. That's what the
I
crowd
got
doesn't know.
All right, folks. It is time for our confirmation round of scoring. This is it. One last chance for our judges to get a look at all 16 competitors. If I can have our Olympia lineup on stage, please.
All right, as they file back on, Tim, I want to do a slight correction. I kept calling Akim Williams. It's Akeem.
It's Akeem.
The Prince of Zamunda. Akeem Williams.
Royalty in Zamunda.
And I got to thank my man, Dave Palumbo. Just had a baby from RX Muscle.
Congratulations,
His
Dave.
third kid. Who knew, right?
He's our age, isn't he?
Dave Palumbo is the training guru, RX Muscle Media guy, based out of New York. He's not here with us, playing daddy back home, but we respect
All
what he
right,
brings to the
gentlemen, in
sport.
place. Let's send
Absolutely.
it down to the judges. Big Steve.
Thank you, Bob. Max, Juan, Michael, Mohamed, and Jonathan.
I have a distinct feeling, Tim, that this is a call out to figure out, you got to place all top 10. They're here.
I think they brought out all 16 right here.
Yeah, but they just made a specific call out. And I think it's hard because these guys need to know where they're at. I'd love to walk around. Well, I
Mohamed and
would
Michael
like
switch.
to walk around. Say, I'm the 9th best bodybuilder in the world, but it means something that has weight.
Mohamed and Max switch. Quarter turn to the right. Quarter turn right. Quarter turn to the right. Face front. Mohamed and John switch. Gentlemen, spread out. Everyone take a step. Hit a front double bicep.
There's not a lot to be discussed here because the judges are actually doing their job of putting them in their final placings, and we can't influence that.
No.
Front lat spread.
Even though the judging's
chest.
already taken place, these guys are still battling because they're obviously trying to improve from yesterday's performance and kind of redeem themselves or find out what's needed to progress and make improvements.
Yeah, and there's a big difference
Back
from
double
10th
bicep.
place to 6th place or 7th place. We're still talking prize money. Has to be dispersed. And if you're 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th, there's thousands of dollars of difference that you get back from the money you spent preparing and the sacrifice you spent to please this audience. So you want to be, as high up as you can get because it starts to add up those dollars and cents.
As well as some pretty good bragging rights. Hey, Judge Steve Weinberger, rotating people, putting them through their paces, various poses to get that final look.
And each other one of these athletes has deserved to be here, guys, because they haven't just come here by qualifying on points. These guys have won shows.
Yeah, and if you follow the sport of bodybuilding, these are familiar names. We've got a couple of new jacks in there from Egypt.
Your
And
favorite, most muscular.
Lukas Osladil is not a real familiar name because he's way out there as a Czech Republic.
Czech Republic. But he looks good.
And see, back in the day, we were talking about Lee Labrada earlier. By the time I got to the Olympia, Lee Labrada had done several shows. I mimicked him because in between, like the guys are standing with their hands on their waist. Go back to YouTube, find Labrada. He's standing like a statue. I mean, even though he's not being called out, he's waiting to be called out. And these guys kind of relax, take it easy, laid back, but they are mimicking each other, right? I think they should take a page out of history and go back and see what the guys were doing that laid the foundation, and the composure will look significantly different.
This is an interesting call out right here. There's a lot of mass right here, a lot of shape, and a lot of varied sizes.
You spoke earlier on about Luke's unique look, different look, yes? But I think that's great for the sport because when we step on stage, we want to be different. We don't want to be the same as everybody else.
Yeah.
A little gamesmanship going on there.
And, you know, he wants to make sure that you know, he belongs there. So he knows that Cedric is like a comedian, Tim. He likes to have fun up there, but he's a serious guy.
Well, he gave Luke a couple of quick pats, and Luke was about to give him quite the goose that would have made the audience laugh.
Quarter turn to the right.
There's a lot of muscle on there, this call-out, guys.
We were talking about our man right here
Quarter turn.
earlier, who's got all the potential in the world. Big Patrick, I'd love to see him stand in the middle next to Cedric, just so we can see what the future's going to look like. He's slight, see, he's almost as tall as Cedric. And he's got to do the Ronnie Coleman thing. He's got to get bigger hamstrings. He's going to have to continue working on bringing up his calves and fill out his pecs like Ronnie Coleman. And that's not an easy thing to do. When we talk about filling out, that means you got to be like Lucas, throw some weight on the bar and get serious about how strong you are.
Lucas and Luke switch.
Oh, this is going to be interesting.
And I meant Luke, not Lucas. Luke is a strong bodybuilder.
Akeem and Patrick switch.
All right, bring Patrick over here next to Cedric. There we go. I think he is. You hear the crowd responding to him. He's welcoming him to the stage. Cedric knows talent when he sees it too.
Front double bicep.
This is going to be a good comparison.
I think Cedric's dialing in as we speak.
Well, that's what happens. The more you pose, the better you get. And some guys can separate themselves from the others. He's a veteran on the stage. Starts slow out of the box, a little bit soft, but as he poses, he gets harder. And you can see the difference in the maturity here. Patrick needs to just put some more meat on that frame, and he'll be right there with Cedric. But if you're looking for aesthetics, Patrick's got everything. He looks like an athlete.
He's got the real foundations to make those changes to be a real force within a couple of years' time. How old is Patrick?
I don't have his age.
Let's look in the notes.
Luke is a very young bodybuilder. He's in his
In his 20s.
yeah, in his 20s, probably 25, 27, I believe.
Spread out a little bit, hit a back lat
The
spread.
thing about it is, Neil, when I was coming up, I hit the stage at like 22 years old at the Olympia, right behind Gaspari, who was like 21 years old. And throughout my 20s, there was the introduction of Flex and Kevin and all these young bodybuilders that made up the Olympia lineup in early 30s. Now these guys are much older. I mean, 30 is probably the average age, maybe 35 for these guys. Can you believe that Lee Haney retired at 31 with 8 Olympia trophies? It is
So hard to believe.
I mean, the things that Arnold Schwarzenegger was doing at the age of 28, and we're talking about Dexter at 49.
And also, when he stepped away from the industry, he was in his lifetime best condition. And there's been very few Mr. Olympias which have actually ever done that. Most Mr. Olympias have actually stepped away from the stage, not representing their best all-time best.
On the decline. We know that Dorian Yates went out at his absolute worst, and Ronnie Coleman at his worst. Lee Haney went out looking almost his absolute best at 31 years old, and he still had gas in the tank. And he put another 5 years in there, he still had gas in the tank. I mean, Dorian might want to have something to say about that, because Dorian changed. From 92 to 93, he was like night and day. But I would have loved to see that competition with
Most muscular.
along with Dorian Yates in 92 and Kevin Veroni and myself. That would have been a one for the ages. And Lee would have probably been winning his 9th Olympia.
Well, I mean, that's a great question for you. So you get a guy like Patrick that comes out here, and he's up against some of these mass monsters, and maybe a little shorter. What was it like being up against those beasts back in the day?
Lee Labrada was showing me it was possible. Muhammad McAway showed me it didn't matter how tall you were or how big you were. Chris Dickerson at 5'6" and Samir Banu at 5'6". I took on giants that were invisible to me because I was trying to be Lee Labrada. I was trying to be Muhammad McAway. They showed me it was possible.
William and Blandon.
And now we get to the payoff. This is what you pay the big bucks to see. We are probably potentially looking at the next Mr. Olympia in this call out right here.
And I don't know if you guys saw that as we were talking. Cedric and Patrick were having quite a moment. It was some great camaraderie and some great encouragement.
It's going to be interesting where they start placing these, where they're going to start moving these athletes around. They're starting to do it now.
Hadi and Dexter switch.
Well, I got to tell you,
William and Steve switch.
Hadi, I believe, is in the conversation. These judges are going to play with us right now. They're not going to give away this show by going 1, 2, 3. Like, you know what I mean? We're not going to figure it out right away. But I mean, I keep coming back to what Blandon is bringing. He's probably one of the more improved bodybuilders over the past 5 years.
This is a pose which really Blandon dominates tonight in his quarter turns. He's got so much depth through his hamstring and his thigh. He's got that upper body, he's got that mass, that shoulder, he's got that...
And to see the width difference between William and Hadi, we were talking earlier, this is where Hadi really is bringing it to William Bonac. So now we got to look next to Hadi over at Blandon, who Hadi is right there.
Hadi's lived up to my expectations, seeing him in the flesh, as well as, you know, pictures and videos, etc. And let's go back. He was a 212 athlete, progressed, moved up, came into the open class, made a massive impression.
You want to hear something crazy? Dexter Jackson started out his career as a bantamweight.
Wow.
He's a full-fledged 230-pound bodybuilder now and has an Olympia trophy, 9 Arnold Classic championships, 29 victories coming from the bantamweight division.
Front lat spread.
And it looks like the veteran Dexter Jackson has actually improved in the last 20 minutes between the first round of posing.
Yeah, I actually believe that Dexter is battling it out with Roelly Winklaar for 4th place.
But at the moment, guys, it looks like first and second look like it's between potentially Hadi and Blandon.
That's where I'm at. I was going to say that just before you said it, which would then leave William as the odd man out fighting for that 3rd place spot. Who would have thought, Neil, about 3 years ago that we'd be talking about Hadi, Brandon Curry, potentially down for the Olympia title?
But this is what it's about. So this is supposed to be an international sport for everybody. And unfortunately, obviously, issues between countries, it's forced the gentleman away from having the chance to prove himself as a true Olympian competitor, and he's really made a great impression here. Him and his coach, Hadi Rambod, they've done a great job.
Guys, I gotta say, I love the open title this year, and I love the fact that it is just wide open to who brings their best.
Well, let me tell you, the whole weekend's been great, Tim. I mean, what Dan Solomon has done with Tamer El Gundy producing the show, and Dan Solomon presenting this competition and bringing his entire crew and staff here together. This is probably one of the most memorable Olympias that we've had in a long time. Not to mention, it's historical in nature. Crowning of a new Mr. Olympia, which we witnessed a year ago with Sean Roden defeating Phil Heath. This one has a little bit more suspense and hype to it. These are guys that were never supposed to win the Olympia. These are guys we weren't going to be talking about as a Mr. Olympia winner, and now they're in the conversation.
In addition to what Dan Solomon and his team and Tamer have done, 650 plus competitors for the amateur Olympia this weekend.
Massive shot. I think that's the biggest one that they've had. And again, what I was saying earlier is like 6 months ago, Hadi didn't even know if he can get a visa to come into the country. And you got to train through that, hoping that you get it. Can you imagine he looked like this, and a week ago they tell him no visa? We would have one of the best bodybuilders in the world sitting back home. And it would be a whole different dynamic we're talking about tonight.
Now, Neil, what was that switch we just saw with Dexter and
William? Yeah, to me that tells me that the number 1 and 2 is definitely the battle between Hadi and Blandon, just because of the situation. Otherwise, you would put William potentially in the middle of those two and put him in the center and compare him between those two athletes. And if first, second, and third in no order is those 3 athletes, then they're totally different shapes and structures. Look at them.
Well, don't be surprised if Dexter Jackson pulls up into 4th place.
Yeah.
Because he's made better improvement than he did overnight. I believe I firmly got Steve Kuclo at 6th.
Hadi's shoulders and arms were just bursting off of each part they're supposed to be.
Well, you know what? If he doesn't win the contest, he's already won the country. What he's done in his first Olympia right now is significant and will be talked about for years to come.
Blandon and Hadi.
There it is.
And let me tell you something. They're not giving them a chance to rest. You know, right now, this is where you earn your money. They're giving $400,000 away. You better get back out there, and they've got to fight for it. If you come out there thinking this is going to be a walk in the park, somebody, look at the look on Brand's face. He's like, I'm ready for this. You got to fight for every inch of space on this stage.
So this is 3.
And guess none of them are over 5. The last guy to win that tall was Dexter Jackson in 2008. It's been 11 years.
Brandon switch. Well, we know that top prize is $400,000, but second and third, $150,000 and $100,000 respectively.
Steve Weinberger's playing with us. He's got them all moving like a magic act, not letting anybody get comfortable in their positioning.
I definitely feel that Williams had an injury on his right quad.
Well, I can tell you, that didn't slow him down because a year ago he was a little bit watery, and he wouldn't have been in this lineup, I believe, last year, yes?
Yeah. Yes.
And he is the benefit of not having a Sean Roden and a Phil Heath and a Big Ramy in this competition, because the injury, however slight or even noticeable, he's still going up against a 49-year-old Dexter Jackson that didn't bring his A game, and a potentially injured Roelly Winklaar, who's slightly off too.
William was actually 5th last year. Brandon was 4th.
Okay.
With Roelly in 3rd.
Either way, he's the benefactor. William is the benefactor of certain circumstances involved with the other athletes right now. And it just goes to show you, you can't put on a show unless you actually show up. And it's a hard road to get to Mr. Olympia.
William was 4th last year. Roden, Heath, Roelly Winklaar, William Bonac.
Correct. Thank you for correcting that. William is making note of how big his arms are. They are big, but the judges can see that. Calm down, William. One of William's best body parts is his arms, and he was definitely making sure the judges were noticing. You see they keep inching closer to him. There's a reason for that. The closer you are to the judges, the more three-dimensional you look. But they are smart enough to keep them in the lighting, to have them on the line so that no one has an advantage.
Okay, now, I just saw an earpiece on Hadi Choopan.
Yes, he's had difficulty hearing for quite some time. A lot of people are trying to he looks like he's trying to read your lips. He doesn't speak English. And what do? We talk louder, thinking he will understand, but he's got a hearing impairment.
That's a phenomenal pose for William. Any we see is unbelievable. And personally, me, I have him winning the rear poses.
And you can see that his glutes are very tight. But this is where he loses it. He just doesn't have the width, and that's the genetic thing. Hadi and Brandon are killing him on this lat spread.
And they're getting worked.
And they should. This is what we paid to see. We want you guys to fight it out. That's why you have to practice long before you get here. You'll notice some guys start to shake. It's because they didn't practice the posing. It's the hardest thing to do when you're watching your carbs, when you're doing extra amounts of cardio. You get lightheaded very easy. So you have to do this at home when no one's watching, so that when you get here, it's easy. And Steve knows. He's had put some of the world's best bodybuilders through these poses, so they're trying to buy time, and Steve's like, and they should. Work for it. There's the vacuum.
Oh.
Hadi's the only one that can pull off that vacuum. And you'll notice the bodybuilders are posing slower. They're trying to buy us some time.
I personally feel that Williams made some good changes. I feel he's harder, he's drier. He's made some good improvements. I think Hadi's very similar, which shows consistency.
I think that Brandon, as he poses, he's breaking a slight little sweat, which gives him that sheen.
Thank you, gentlemen. Back in line.
That was a great top 3 right there.
They didn't move Brandon from the center. That's something important to note. I've been there with Lee Haney and Dorian Yates and Ronnie Coleman. That's significant to note as we go into the next phase. Chanting for Hadi heavily.
Well, folks, you've got a chance to let us know who you like, because we have the People's Champ presented by our good friends at S-Force. Everyone's putting out these special Olympia edition watches, and information is getting put up on the as you phones out as we speak. This is live, being done right now for all of our fans here in attendance. Roelly Winklaar winning the People's Champ Award last year. Who you fans like here at this year's Olympia. Speaking of the People's Champ, folks, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize one of the best in the world and of all time. He is your Olympia official ambassador this year, four-time Olympian champion, Jay Cutler. And remember, folks, in the unlikely event of a tie tonight, we will Shaw and Shaquille O'Neal arm wrestle to the death. Uh-oh, I see some calling out going on down there. Here we go. I don't want no part of that. All right, folks, we're going to see our Olympians back in just a bit. We're going to give the guys a breather. Right now, we're going to turn our attention to our men's physique. Top 10 in the world. Please welcome, from the USA, George Brown.
George Brown, 3 top 5s in 2019, 5th in the Arnold, 1st in Salt Lake. Judges really love that fully muscled V. His top Olympia so far is a 7th. His prejudge was really good. All these guys just look bigger and harder this year.
From Brazil, please welcome Carlos de Oliveira.
From Brazil, now living in Medford, Mass. Great showings in 2018 and 19. The win in California and the Night of Champions. This morning at prejudge, I really took note of how he looks like the prototypical men's physique competitor that they're trying to model the sport after, especially with the conditioning, mid-back, that really tapered waist down to the low back. Not overly muscled, but like they said when they created the category, very charismatic.
Welcome from the USA, Raymont Edmonds.
Raymont Edmonds, trying to decide which tunnel he's coming out of. One of the favorites, looked great at prejudge. 2nd at last year's Olympia Physique, at this year's Arnold. So if you look on the NPC website, Sean, and people wonder, what are they looking for with physique? Well, they're not just looking for a shape. They're also looking for the charisma, the stage presence. Someone that comes out and, like the bikini girls, lights up the stage with that pop, that wow factor that really represents overall fitness.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not looking for bodybuilding. It's bodybuilding light, right? I mean, they don't want a big, huge, muscular guy. They want a guy that's shapely, has the abdominals, have those deltoids, and this guy has all of that and more.
Well, Lucky Libra has been lucky with a lot of first places in his career. IMC did the Miami Pro for him last year when he won, and he looked incredible. Olympia, he's been very close. There's a lot of camaraderie among these guys as well.
Absolutely, and you know, he has a lot of fun. He's very confident. If you take away this division, and he's going to be a classic physique bodybuilder, you know, it's a couple of potatoes away from blowing up into the next category.
Actually, there's a couple guys coming up. I think one next in Xavisus Gayden, who's 6'1", 210. And there's a couple of these guys that they make fun of the physique guys sometimes. They're not missing leg day. A couple of these guys are big.
Yes, Xavius Gayden out of San Diego, a U.S. military serviceman, just retired from the military. I believe he put in over 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, great representative, has a kid back home, and he does the business, man. Tall, 6 foot. Tall for me, Tim.
Wow.
He's won a slew of competitions. He's done his country a very good service, and we appreciate all the efforts that he has done, as well as entertaining us with this physique.
Well, coming out of San Diego, I can only assume he's either Navy or Marine. We thank him for his service, but we also know if he did a full run, unless he enlisted late, he's in his late 30s or early 40s.
Yeah, I don't know how old he is, but that's the funny thing about men's physique, is that age is not something we've got around to even discussing, because we're so focused on looking at these bodies. And you're right, the maturity level for an older competitor would look a lot different on a young guy, but I don't really distinguish that yet. We haven't even talked about age with these guys. I have no idea how old Xavius is. 20 years in the military, he's got to be probably
38 at the least, so I'm guessing somewhere between 39 and about 42.
Yeah, and this is a division that was dominated for years. Jeremy Bundia won this competition 4 times. Mark Anthony was the original physique champion here at Olympia.
Now, he's out of New York, had 3 top 3s in 2019 to qualify with a win at the Giovanni Paula Miami Pro.
And again, this being one of our newer divisions, a lot of guys are qualifying by a lot of different ways, so we can't get to all the shows. There's a lot of competitions for these men's physique. We don't know a lot about these athletes and their background. They just haven't been around enough to get that information like we have on the bodybuilders. But you get a diverse group of athletes in this category, and they have different walks of life that they come from, a lot of different backgrounds.
Well, and we talked about how bikini has become up to half of a local competition. Men's physique is another half to 2/3. I know that pretty much says a whole, but realistically, as labor and body intensive as bodybuilding is, and even classic physique, these are accessible to an extent to the average athlete.
It's very inclusive. A lot of these athletes are coming from different backgrounds, and a lot of these athletes have other hobbies and jobs, whereas for a lot of the bodybuilders, it's all bodybuilding. They can't do anything except eat, sleep, and train. These guys have friends, they have families, they have kids, and they have jobs that they have to do. And yet, they find time to watch those calories, do the cardio, lift the weights, and still do the business. You don't get to the Olympia by moonlighting. You got to put in the work.
I got to say, this is one of the ones I made note of from his pictures throughout the year, who does not skip leg day. He's got a great flare to his back as well. But if you look on his trunks there's some low quads sneaking out the bottom that says this guy squats as part of his daily routine. Well, not daily, but as far as his workout split.
Right. Some of these guys, they put on the shorts, they come down to their knee, and you think they don't do the legs, but a lot of them do. They are lifting and squatting. They just got to be controlled. They don't want to get too big. It's not a leg contest. That's why you have the board shorts.
Yeah.
A lot of the bodybuilders that are resistant to this coming in call this men's bikini because the men are like, oh, they're just boys in bikinis. Well, you know, these guys are slowly eking out nice financial opportunities for themselves, building up huge Instagram followings, getting opportunities to do modeling for clothing and for these very swimsuits that they're actually in. And they get a lot of following where people want to look like them, and they wind up doing online training and online coaching, and they're laughing at some of the bodybuilders all the way to the bank, while the bodybuilders are just sleeping and training. These guys are capitalizing on a market that's growing very fast and is very inclusive.
Now, I got to point out, as someone who competes in men's physique, of course, over 50, seeing these guys and seeing the quality of every one of these competitors compared to a local or even a national top-level competitor, these guys are a level above.
Absolutely. These aren't guys that are just putting on board shorts. These are guys that are putting in the work long before they parade themselves out on this stage.
And this is a charismatic guy right here. He brings just a lot of pretty to the stage. Ryan Terry has second in 2016. He's a plumber by trade before somebody entered him in a modeling contest in the UK.
There you go. That's the thing about physique. We have all these different diverse backgrounds of guys that, and somehow or another, they find a way to make a profession as an athlete. This is a profession. This is not something you just wake up one day and you're on the Olympia stage. They're actually competing for prize money. This is part of their job, and they're finding a way to monetize their efforts and their sacrifice to entertain and show what's possible.
And your final competitor.
And he brought some serious conditioning.
Defending Olympia champion from the USA, Brandon Hendrickson.
All right, I mentioned Brandon earlier. He also was one of the winners in China in the month of November. And he also was inducted into the Dumbbell Hall of Fame. I don't know how that happened. It was very quick because he's still in the prime of his career. But the Dumbbell Hall of Fame recognizes athletes that are doing the business. Very full across the chest, got some round deltoids, tiny waist, nice abs. Looks like an athlete. He actually looks like the trophy that they have for these guys.
You know, we talk about the bodybuilders changing condition from morning to night. Ryan Terry looks a little tighter. Brandon looks a little tighter as well.
Yeah, I come from the bodybuilding cloth, so I don't follow the men's physique, but I'm paying more and more attention to how the guys are starting to get a little bit bigger. It's bodybuilding light, but they are starting to reward the guys with a little bit more muscularity. They're not so lightly framed. Like the women bikini don't have any girth to them. These men physique, you can tell he's lifting some weights.
Oh, yeah.
He's got the pec.
And not skipping leg day. You see the balance from top to bottom.
Yeah, those board shorts are pretty tight on him.
Well, that's Brandon Hendrickson. And before we get to our confirmation round, we're going to have a break.
Top 10 gentlemen. For those that saw the prejudging, you saw a very, very close contest. The judges really working our competitors hard. Many comparisons, and you can see everything was on the line. We're going to move into our confirmation round of scoring. This is one last chance for our judges to get a look at our competitors. So if I can have all 10 of our competitors on stage, please.
Here they come. Now, this is going to be interesting for the fans and for the purpose of, do you take down the champ? Do you move him right or left to first, second, or third? There was an interesting series of call-outs this morning, Sean, that just left it wide open who was where.
Well, I do know that this is the fastest rising division in all of the fitness industry. And some of those physique guys are moving up into this category, and some bodybuilders are dropping down into the category.
All right, what do you think of our men's physique lineup this year at the Olympia? All right, let's send it down to the judging panel once again. Big Steve.
Let them do their job.
Thank you, Bob. Ondrej Kmostak, George, Xavier, Anthony, Carlos, and Ryan.
Is that what you expected, Tim, from earlier?
No.
Do you think this is the top call-out, or are they just kind of trying to find a place for these guys?
Ryan and Ondrej switch.
I believe this is just like, it's the confirmation round, so I don't believe this is the top call-out. It is a comparison.
But I saw Ryan top 3 or 4 this morning.
Carlos and
Okay,
Xavier
so
switch.
he's in there.
Gentlemen, turn around, please. Thank you, gentlemen.
That was quick. Steve Weinberger now going to look at the remaining guys, which you know will be your top 4 or 5, depending.
Brandon, Andre Ferguson, and Raymont.
Yep.
This one sounds like what the fans came here to see.
Raymond and Kyron switch.
Well, Tim, we got a packed house. I mean, it looks, for all intents and purposes, to be sold out completely right now from what we just saw.
They're up into the rafters for sure.
Gentlemen, turn around, please.
All right, the champ is nowhere near the middle.
Well, from my humble opinion, when it comes to the men's physique, and I've never judged the men's physique, the calves don't really play our factor here.
No.
This is not something that they're even looking at. I see some of the guys put some oil on it, but it pretty much is meaningless. This is a board short contest, which starts, I believe, from the knee up.
It does.
Gentlemen, back in line. Back to you, Bob.
And we'll find out in just a bit.
All right, thank you, Big Steve. Folks, a quick announcement. The Men's Physique Awards has been increased this year, a record $61,000 for our gentlemen here tonight. Lots of changes here at the Olympia, folks. I want to give a few shout-outs while I got the opportunity. We got a new crew in place for this year's Olympia production, and I think they've done a great job over this weekend. What do you think of this set, folks? Caden Riley in the back. He's busy getting things done back there, but Caden's done a great job this weekend. Martin Carrillo, he's back there. He's the guy responsible for all these graphics you see. Angelica Nebbia, right down in the front row. Angelica, appreciate everything you do. Tamer El Gindi, our producer for this year's Olympia. Tamer's back there in the booth doing a great job. And of course, our good friend Dan Solomon, our here today. Presenting the 5th place award is Mr. Zach Ziegler, Executive Editor of Muscle and Fitness. Welcome to the stage, Zach. Got your new sneaks on, huh? I like that. Zach, the 5th place award, the check for $2,000, and presented to Ryan Terry.
That's it.
That was your boy you were talking about earlier.
I had him top 5, but I actually had him top 3 the way they moved him around this morning.
Yeah, is he from England?
He is.
Okay. He held his condition for coming so far. Look at the tight abs, intercostals, it's all there.
I might say he's the best conditioned guy up there when you see them all up there. Now stay up there, Ryan. Stay in your position, buddy.
He's new to this.
Well, he was 3rd a couple years ago, so maybe he's new to being 5th.
Okay, yeah, right.
The 4th place award. I'd like to welcome Kevin, representing All Maxx. Kevin, please take the 4th place award, the check for $4,000, and presented to Brandon Hendrickson.
There.
That's a tumble.
That is right there.
That's a tumble for. He came here to win this competition. He won several times. He won in Hawaii. I watched him win over in Ohio. I watched him win over in China. This was one he wanted to get.